Welcome to Barbuda, a hidden gem in the Caribbean's Lesser Antilles. This enchanting island, part of the twin island nation of Antigua and Barbuda, offers a serene escape into a true nature's paradise. Feel the embrace of Barbuda's pristine beauty. Here, pink and white sandy beaches stretch endlessly, calling you to unwind into the world's most enjoyable climate. Experience the unique charm of the Frigate Bird Sanctuary, home to the largest nesting colony of magnificent frigate birds in the world. Explore the untouched beauty of Barbuda's diverse habitats, where rugged scenery and mesmerizing shores create an ecological sanctuary. With its sparsely populated land, friendly locals, and relaxing atmosphere, Barbuda invites you to disconnect from the world and reconnect with nature. If you'd like to show some love, please subscribe to support this channel.
Barbuda! Woohoo! It's Barbudaful.
If you're looking for some travel information or if you're just curious about life on the island, this video is for you. We're going to walk you on this cute little hand-drawn map and show you all the spots to see on the island.
Shall we start with a few facts?
Sure.
Quick facts for the traveler. First of all, the official language is English. For currency, they use the Eastern Caribbean dollar. It's about 2.7 to 1 on the US dollar. Water is not so drinkable. It's usually collected rainwater or from the desal plant. And so maybe not so great, but bottled water is readily available. So I'd go that route.
Then driving is on the left on this island?
Driving is a whole subject in itself. Yes, it's on the left, former English colony. So if you're from the US or normal right driving, you'll have to get used to that. But with a little practice, you'll do okay. And luckily, there's not a lot of traffic.
Zero. Unless you count the donkeys, the goats, the chickens.
Oh my God, the animals all over the road. Be careful of those, especially at night. For rental cars, you're not going to find any agencies here. There's no Hertz or Avis or anything like that. You'll have to rent from a local, or maybe your accommodation can arrange one. We actually got one through our accommodation, just using one of their own cars, personal cars. But it worked out great. So.
And Mike was super excited because our car rental came with a machete.
A machete! When has your rental car ever come with a machete? Which made me a little nervous at first, and also a little excited.
But you get why we're gonna need it.
We'll tell you about that later. One other thing we should mention though is a driver's permit. Like many of the Caribbean islands, you need a local driver's permit. It's mandatory, even if you have an international driver's license. There's usually a small fee. Here in Antigua and Barbuda, it's 50 EC or about 20 US. Your host or a rental car place on Antigua can arrange it for you, and it's good for both islands. So if you already have one in Antigua, you can use it over here in Barbuda.
Sounds good. All right, so how do we get to the island?
How do we get to Barbuda?
Well, there are two ways to get there. You can take the ferry.
The only one ferry that we're aware of is the Barbuda Express. You can find them online, and a lot of people take it. It's a slower ride, maybe, I don't know if it's an hour and a half ride, but because Barbuda is out there towards the Atlantic, it can be a little rough. You'll see a lot of people reviewing it online saying it's kind of a rough passage if the weather isn't cooperating.
So we decided to fly over, which takes about 15 minutes, and it's an experience on its own. It's just so cool because you're in this one of those really small planes.
Really small.
There was space for only 7 people. And it's wonderful. You're in a tin can flying through the air. You can see everywhere around you.
Very small plane, and one pilot, and if you're sitting in the front row, you feel like you can even grab the controls and help out if need be. But it is a short flight. It's beautiful. It leaves from the regular international airport, Visit Bird in Antigua, and lands on the airstrip in Barbuda, and again, just 15 minutes. By the way, I love the 3-digit code for Barbuda. It's BBQ, so nothing like a barbecue.
And yeah, if you take the flights, you can show up about an hour, maybe before your flight. You don't need to be there in advance. It happens really quickly. They just check your luggage, check your weight, and then load you on board, and off you go.
And by the way, they check your weight and your carry-on bag and your checked bag. You actually have to stand on the scale because it's a small plane, so... And of course, it may go without saying, but there's no international flights at all to Barbuda. You'll have to come to Antigua first and then head over. So that's how you get there.
All right.
What about places to stay?
Well, there's not that many options on the island at all. And the few options there are kind of on the higher end.
Yeah, a couple like gated community type resort areas, maybe one or two that we know of. But.
Right. There's a couple of cottages as well. Thanks to Mike, we ended up finding a local who was renting their own cottage. And we stayed in there and it was charming and right in town. That made it easy for us and maybe less expensive, even though even that was
Yeah, it's kind of a little bit of an expensive island, even though there aren't many services. But everything on a remote island tends to be a little more expensive. The cottage we stayed at was called Casa Tranquila. And it was a family-run place. Kelsey is the host, and her mom and her mom's husband, Cowie and Nigel, also helped out, and they were wonderful. Absolutely. Super friendly, super attentive. Everything you needed, they were right there to help out. We just loved them, and we were so lucky to stay there. The cottage is new, and has a little kitchenette, kind of, but a grill out back for cooking. And for us, it worked out great. It's right in town. And yeah, we loved it. So
yeah, and we rented our car from them as well, so that made it very easy.
The car with machete. Yeah. So speaking about the rental cars, it's probably a good time now to talk about the roads. Barbuda is really not developed at all. And of course, if you remember, Hurricane Irma came through in 2017. It went directly over the island. They got hit and pretty much wiped out. We'll talk more about that later. The roads are mostly dirt. Potholes, one so deep you feel like you could fall right into. So it's a little bit obstacle course driving. You really have to pay attention. It's a little dusty on the roads, of course. And many of the roads, as you get further afield from Codrington, the main town, they're just single track roads through the wilderness. So be prepared for that. You want a car that can handle that, a little higher clearance. 4x4 is great. We didn't have that, not required, but just be aware the roads are a little rough, and especially if they've gotten sustained rain, it can be muddy and a little slippery. I don't think that happens too often because it's a very flat island and the storms tend to pass right over, but just be aware.
And also when it comes to the road, just be aware that Google Maps is not quite accurate. We use the combination of our hand-drawn map, Google Maps, and Maps.me. So I would recommend downloading the offline version of Maps.me because that seemed to be the most accurate map for all the off-road driving.
Between both sets of maps, the hand-drawn map, a general sense of direction, a little bit of adventure seeking, and a lot of courage, you can get around the island. But I will say a car is absolutely necessary. If you're on a day trip, you can arrange for a tour, but if you're going to stay a few days, you want a car to get around the island, absolutely.
Unless you're staying in one of those resorts and cottages that are right on the beach and you intend to just go down the beach, jump in the water, and then have food there.
Yeah, if you're going to stay on the resort, you're all set. But there aren't any really cabs and buses or anything like that. You might be able to find a local to bring you around, but you're going to want a car.
So what is there to see around the island? We're going to start by showing you the main town.
Codrington.
It's a very tiny, small place with only a few streets. There's one bank, one grocery store, a couple of superettes, a little school, a fishing pier.
And that's about it. Some houses, obviously, where the locals live, but it's a really small town. Don't expect a lot of tourist shops or anything like that.
There's about 1,600 people that live on the island, so the island is not going to be very busy anyways. Alright, so let's move towards the southern end of the island. Driving south from the main town, you're going to first stumble upon the Martello Tower. So I have a little bit of information that I found online. I'm not sure if my sources are really good, but here's what I found. The Martello Tower is supposed to be Barbuda's most important colonial vestige. It was built by the British in the 19th century and maybe stands on the site of an earlier, probably Spanish fort. It is rumored to be the oldest such building built in the Caribbean. It's a cylindrical stronghold designed and used in Corsica in the 15th century. And apparently the proper name is Martello Tower, but the British somehow changed the spelling. You can find these towers in Canada, Australia, South Africa, Sri Lanka, and Barbuda. Unfortunately, Hurricane Irma has destroyed 90% of the buildings in Barbuda, and the tower does not look exactly like the photos we saw online. There's also a fence around it. We were not able to really go into it, but filmed it for you from the outside. And apparently this used to be a popular place to get married on the island.
Behind the Martello Tower is the river beach, which is a great stretch of sand and beautiful water to swim in. We really enjoyed that.
Yeah, we're there by ourselves. It's absolutely wonderful. Very calm water, beautiful Barbudan beach.
A little further down the road, you'll come to the ferry pier. and that's where the main Barbuda Express arrives. But also there'll be some fishermen. Usually in the afternoon they might be coming with fresh catch. So if you're looking to cook at home, get some fresh Barbudan seafood, swing by the ferry pier and ask around.
Further down the road, you have the Barbuda Cottages and Uncle Roddy's beach bar and grill. And that's a really wonderful beach as well. Beautiful white sand, the water is crystal clear, and you have Roddy's, one of the better restaurants on the island.
One of the few restaurants on the island. Speaking of food, if you're a foodie, there's a Nobu. The famed Nobu has a location in Barbuda, and that's a little bit further south. So if you're into the high-end food experience, go see them. They're on the beach.
Then if you continue further down south, you'll stumble upon Princess Diana Beach, and that's one of the most wonderful, beautiful beaches on the island.
Nice.
I think one of my favorite. The water again, crystal clear, white sandy beach. There's a little bar there as well. You can get some drinks.
After Princess Diana Beach, the road ends at a gated community for the Ocean Beach Club. So if you're lucky enough to stay there, you can send us a video because we didn't get to see it. There is a kind of off-road track that goes towards the southeast of the island. It's actually the easternmost point on Barbuda, and it's called, what's it called again?
Spanish Point.
Spanish Point, which is an adventure again in itself.
Yeah, we didn't get to see that either because the road is really, there's a lot of potholes and it's extremely difficult to drive through, and you know, having a rental car, we wanted to be really careful with it. So we kind of got there, but not really, but we can show you what it looks like because we flew the drone almost to the end. There's really nothing out there. There's a couple of houses and that's about it. But this is the most eastern point of the island.
But you can drive quite a ways to it and then hike the rest of the way. We just didn't have the time to do it. So now that we've seen the southern part of the island, let's talk about the northern half.
If you head north, the first stop is the Highland House ruins, and those are ruins sitting on top of a hill. It is the tallest point of the island. We tried to make it there with our car, but unfortunately the road was really overgrown and it was very difficult. So instead of that, we flew our drone to at least see the ruins, and this is what it looks like.
Now you can hike up there, and we've heard that from there, there's about a 45-minute hike to the Darby Cave and Sinkhole, and you might even see some red-footed tortoises along the way, but unfortunately we didn't have time to do that. So if you keep going past the Highlands House, you'll eventually come to the eastern side of the island, and you'll find 2 Foot Bay. Now this bay is stunning. In the car, you'll see the Hillside Cafe on your right, probably one of the only buildings you'll see out there. And you can go a little bit further before you'll have to park. There is an area where you see stones that you maybe think you can travel over, but don't. If a big wave comes, you're a goner. So park the car, and you'll walk about 300 meters or so, and you'll come to 2 Foot Bay Beach, this huge arcing pile of white sand. It's beautiful, the waves crashing in from the Atlantic. It's really stunning. Also out there, you'll find some caves. Now there's one in particular where the beach is a little wider. You'll see an agave plant that's been kind of carved into with everybody's name. So a graffitied agave plant. From there, you'll see a little path going into the stone cliffs, and there's a cave in there. Very short, a little steep, rocky climb, but very quickly you'll come out the top, and now you'll be on top of the bluffs. And if you walk out to the edge of the cliff, you'll have an amazing view down the entire eastern coastline and over 2 Foot Bay. It's just stunning, really worth it. Try to find that cave. Now there's some other caves out there as well. I didn't find any, or I didn't look for them really. There's rumored to be some petroglyphs in some of them, so you can look for that if you're into it. And also, kind of from the parking area, I think there's a trail from there if you want to go to the Darby Cave and the Sinkhole from that side rather than the Highlands House. I think you can do that, but we didn't try, so I can't be sure. But definitely go to 2 Foot Bay and go up and through the cave and see the views.
And here's a video to show you what a trip through the cave looks like.
So for the caves at 2 Foot Bay, you park at the end of the road, and you'll follow this path here by these 2 big rocks you'll see. Come down the beach a ways, and right where the rocks kind of end and the sand kind of starts, you look up at the cliff, and you see this kind of widening with probably some footprints. And you see this big agave plant that people have carved their name into, I guess. So anyways, you go past that, and then you'll see a trail definite trail. And it's just around that tree and then up into the cave. Pretty easy to find, no need for a guide for this cave anyways.
If you continue further north from the caves, towards a point marked Tommy Hill Barbuda on Google Maps, you will not find much there. There's a huge beach, but lots of waves crashing, and a few of those abandoned buildings may be ruined by the hurricane.
There's some trash there too, and some of the sargassum seaweed that tends to plague the Caribbean, so not a great beach for swimming.
So a place worth definitely going is Fishing Creek Bay. The best way to get there from town is to follow first Highland Road, the main road out of town, then take Cave Road up until the section where Cave Road separates into two, then take the left side of the road, this one is an unnamed road on maps.me, and follow it all the way through the Codrington Lagoon Reserve.
So while that sounds straightforward, let me tell you, it is most definitely not. This is an adventure. You're definitely going to want a good car for this one as well, like I said before. The road is really just a single track. It's not bad in the beginning, but the vegetation can be overgrown on either side. And since that side of the island is very arid, there's all these thorny, thick branches, hence the machete.
Yeah, this is where you need a machete, and this is what you need to do with a machete.
Because if you don't, you will scrape the sides of your car really badly. So we had to get out several times to machete some branches down, and those branches are thorny. I got a little bloody, I have to say. But you keep going, and then there's definitely some rocky parts. Towards the end, it kind of widens out. The vegetation thins a little bit, which you think makes it easier, but it's the opposite. Now you don't know which way to go, really. So your chances of getting lost out there are much higher. And if that scares you, you might want to hire a guide or talk to some locals before heading out there. Because often the cell phone service doesn't even work. So you're relying on maps in a sense of direction, but it can be really tricky.
Yeah, and you're looking for potential trails on the road, like tires of other cars that have been there.
Yeah, and definitely don't go if it's been raining recently. But when you do get there, wow, it's really cool, isn't it? I mean, it's this great bay. About a kilometer offshore, there's a big reef, and you can see the waves crashing into the Atlantic. But that means inside the water's a little calmer.
Very calm, beautiful, and you feel like cut off from the rest of the world. And we
Totally
did not
nice
see a
way.
soul out there, except for a few pelicans and a few frigate birds. And it was all us all afternoon. And
Yeah, it's very shallow, warm water, white sand, like you said, and there's some seagrasses, and you can go conch hunting, which is kind of fun. This one I think is good.
if you're looking to grill some conch at home, you can find them there under the seagrassy bed.
Hunt for them. There's a lot of empty shells there.
There are a lot of beautiful shells on the beach, but I don't think you can take them home. So take some photos, and that's it.
But they're great to look at. Really beautiful out there. So if you're looking for a remote island experience, go to Fishing Bay Creek.
This is it. Next, we're taking you to the northwest corner of the island for another interesting experience. We're gonna head towards the Frigate Bird Sanctuary.
Yes, very cool. Now this is accessible really only by boat, and you need a guide because it is a national park. So you can find them usually hanging out around the fishing pier in town. We use someone named Solomon, who's a really expert guide, and his partner Kevin took us out actually, and they were great. Now the national park, of course, has a fee. You got to know that. At the fishing pier, there'll be some people, some authorities there, and you have to pay $5 US per person. That's kind of a sanctuary fee, which is fine with us, right, to help protect. And then, of course, the guide himself, like we paid about 120 US, I think, for just the two of us in the boat. About 3-hour tour, but it was really worth the money, I thought.
Absolutely, and
Yeah.
Kevin did such a great job taking
Yeah.
us around. I mean, the first stop was the Frigate Bird Sanctuary, and that's absolutely amazing. You
So many birds.
so many birds, and you go around the mangroves and see all the birds, and they're flying all around you. They're little chicks. There's some of the males are still doing the red neck
Yeah,
thing
the
to attract
pouches
females.
here to attract females.
They stay on the island from September to April, and then they head to the Galapagos. At least we've heard that the males head to Galapagos, but the females stay on the island to take care of the chicks because they have to take care of the chicks for 2 years before they can fly off on their own.
So in the early part of the season, you'll see the males with the red pouches trying to attract females and building their nests. And of course, later in the season, you'll see the chicks with their little white fuzzy heads. They were so cute. before they all fly off.
Then we headed next to Pink Sand Beach, and oh my god, this is my favorite beach in the entire island. I was so mesmerized by the pinkish sand and the milky blue waters and the waves crashing gently onto the sand. We had the beach all to ourselves, and it was absolutely a wonderful experience. I just could not take my eyes off the water.
Yeah, and to get there, we had to exit the lagoon and go around to the Caribbean seaside. So you're actually on the outside of this barrier beach. And you say pink sand, and of course everybody says that, but really when you get up close, you realize there's millions of tiny, tiny, tiny pink shells, which makes it really cool. So enjoy the pink sand beach and spend some time there, go for a swim. It's really great.
A highlight on our trip to Barbuda.
Now, before the Hurricane Irma, you used to have to go back around through the entrance of the lagoon, but now what used to be 17-mile beach is now only 11-mile beach because Hurricane Irma wiped out a whole section of the strip of the beach. So now we kept going south and re-entered the lagoon that way. And as we did, we passed a couple of hotels, right? That one in particular that was really damaged.
You can see the destruction from Irma. It's absolutely horrendous.
This huge cement building just decimated, and you kind of see the power of a hurricane. And of course, we spoke with Kevin, our guide, and he told us how scary it was for the locals who were here. It was a direct hit, right?
Direct hit, 12 hours, and they got to experience being in the middle of the eye of the storm.
The eye of the storm, yeah. Crazy. The trip out there is a little expensive, of course, but we felt it was really worth it. And just to be on a boat in the water in the Caribbean is well worth it, if you ask us.
Absolutely fantastic. So now that you've seen the entire island, let us give you a little bit of travel advice. First, let's start with some food options and the restaurants on the island.
There are restaurants on the island?
Just a few.
There's not many to choose from. I think we told you about Nobu and Uncle Roddy's.
There's one sort of a bar casino sort of restaurant called Timbuk One, and there's a burger joint on the main road. And then it's really street vendors that seem to come after 6 p.m. at night, along with some barbecue on the streets and things like hamburgers, jerk chicken, hot dogs, and
yeah, you just gotta walk or drive through town and walk up to the grill and see what they're cooking. Get some local food.
You can also buy your own food and cook at home, but there's only one grocery store and it's really, really tiny, so don't expect to find the same products as you'll find at home.
But the highlight of the Barbuda food scene is...
lobster.
Lobsters, Caribbean lobsters. Now keep in mind, these lobsters do not have claws, but they're so delicious. It is not to be missed while you're in Barbuda. Now we went to the fishing pier, the one in town by the supermarket, not the ferry pier, and asked around, and we met Junior, who had a whole trap full of lobsters, fresh, and we just picked them right out of the sea. It's amazing. Took them home, grilled them up.
Yeah, Mike grilled them.
Garlic,
absolutely
butter.
Fantastic.
They're fantastic. Please do. Even if you don't cook your own, go to a restaurant, try the lobster. And seafood in general. Another day we went down to the ferry pier down south, like we mentioned. Went out on the beach there to the fishing boats, and we met Charlie and Chuka. Some locals there had just come in with some fresh fish. And we took those home and grilled them up. Delicious.
Absolutely.
So don't miss the seafood, especially don't miss the lobster.
So our impressions of the island. There are very few tourists on the island, and it feels very remote and very local. And people are very friendly.
Yeah, super friendly.
And we also felt safe. We weren't concerned about crime or getting our car broken into or anything like that. The prices are a little bit high, but it's an island and it's expected because everything needs to be shipped over there. Then the weather seems absolutely perfect.
Yeah, with warm water, warm skies.
Well, except for hurricane season, of course.
Well, hurricane season. We don't recommend travel during hurricane season.
Yeah.
But I think otherwise, though, maybe get a passing shower or something like you might expect in the Caribbean. But because Barbuda is such a flat country, it's really low and flat, the clouds really just pass right over. They don't need to dump the rain.
It is a fairly arid island with low shrubs and even some cacti. Maybe there were some palm trees before the hurricane, but definitely most of them are gone now. Let us tell you about the stars at night.
Oh my gosh, the stargazing. There's like literally zero light pollution. We came out of the restaurant one night and looked up.
You can see the Milky
Wow.
Way. It's so dark out there. It's absolutely
Make
beautiful.
a point to get outside at night and look up. Now there are also a few things we didn't expect. I was surprised at the lack of services. There weren't really many, souvenir shops or tourist shops you could see. I mean, just the grocery store, and there wasn't a lot there at all, which I didn't expect.
Also, another thing I did not expect is some parts of the island were fenced in because of development and new hotels being put in, and you did not have access to those beaches.
There's a lot of construction going on in development, and I think part of that's just post-Irma, trying to rebuild. But because they fenced off the areas, when you're driving down the road, you can't just pull off and jump over to the beach. So that was a little disappointing, but I imagine that'll clean itself up in a few years.
Yeah, then restaurants are a little bit hard to find because there's only a few on the island and they're quite pricey. So be aware of that. And there are less available products in the grocery store. There's not much there.
So now that we told you about it, you might be wondering, how many days should you spend there?
Well, we spent 4 days there. Of course, if you have a lot of time, spend as much time as you can, because I don't think you'll find emptier beaches and more beautiful beaches in all of the Caribbean.
And there's a lot of lobster to eat.
Yeah, for sure. But I think, some people come here just for the day and do a day trip from Antigua, and that's enough. They'll see the bird sanctuary, the pink sand beach, and a couple more highlights.
And there's actually some tours, I think one in particular, the Hillside Tours, if you look for them online. They specialize in kind of a Visit Barbuda in a day. So if you're interested in just a day trip, do that. But
if
really,
you have time,
you should stay longer.
Definitely. Stay at least 2 nights over there. We loved our full 4 days on the island. So up to you, but it's a wonderful place.
Once you get into the relaxed pace and see the stars and have some lobster, I keep mentioning that, you'll be glad you stayed a few extra days. And it's very different compared to Antigua or some other islands in the Caribbean. They're very much built up and tourist central. This really feels local. So if you're into that kind of thing and you don't want the all-inclusive resort, this is definitely an island for you. I give Barbuda 2 thumbs up.
Yeah, me too.
I hope you enjoyed this tour of Barbuda. If you have been to the island and have impressions or tips to share, please leave a comment so other people can read about your experience. Thank you so much for being part of my channel, and thanks for your support. It means a lot to me. See you soon for another exciting destination.